The Fantasmagorium show presents Guns, Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns. Timothy Dalton returns for his second and final showing as 007. Now that I mention it, David Hedison returns for his second and final showing as Felix Leiter in the final Bond of the 1980s. And with what we have, we'll edit all this out. With that, we have a lot of franchise veterans taking a final bow. Of course, James Bond closes out the decade with an explosive crescendo in 1989's License to Kill. My name is Scotty. My opposite number is Catherine. And Steve is throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars out of a plane somewhere in the Florida Keys. It's not necessarily my best intro, Cat, but I think I've done worse as well.
It is also John Glenn's final Bond film.
Many people are like, we don't get Robert Brown anymore as M. Sylvia Twist or
his Money Penny.
Mm-hmm. What was her name again? Sorry, I forget the actress's name.
Caroline Bliss.
Yes, Caroline Bliss. And I was checking, and I was wondering if this was going to be a Cubby Broccoli final film, but no, that's not true. That doesn't happen until Goldeneye.
I think this is the last one where he was on set every day kind of thing.
Right.
He's there for more of a supervising role for Goldeneye.
Mm-hmm. But still, this is sort of the end of the original era, although there is going to be crossover as we move forward. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We have Pierce Brosnan next, but now we must celebrate the magnificence that is Timothy Dalton. You're just going to agree? There's no pushback on the greatness that is Timothy Dalton?
Well, he's good in the action scenes and stuff.
He is. And I think he not to cross my genres, but he can take a punch like Harrison Ford. Watching Timothy Dalton get beat up in this movie is great.
At times.
I thought he looked believable.
There's one scene in particular where I was kind of like, I don't know about that. But
fair enough. Fair enough. It is a contentious film, though. Many people love it, myself included. Many people hate it. Friend of the show, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm hoping to have a conversation with him in the future when we have a little bit more time to expound on it. But where do you stand in terms of this particular film?
I'm on the fence.
You're on the fence. I'm looking forward to your How Many Martinis.
Yeah.
But it is the first PG-13 James Bond film. It did have to get cut down by the MPAA, or the MPAA made suggestions to bring it down because of excessive violence and gore. And we'll discuss that amazing scene when it happens. I think that, I don't have enough good things. I have too many good things to say about this. The Bond girls are amazing. The villains are amazing. Okay.
I don't know about the girls, but
why? Okay, so let's start with Talisa Soda as Lupe.
A little ditzy. I don't buy her falling in love with Bond overnight, like madly in love with him type of thing. But we'll get to that when we get there.
Okay, for sure. Is this going to be one of these one of the shows that is more beneficial if we just address it point by point as we go through the scenes?
Probably, but
before we do that,
a couple other things.
Yes.
First, we can confirm now that the final box office report for No Time to Die, since it is officially done, $774,034,007.
$007. Love it. I love it.
And I will selfishly take credit for the $007.
And rightly so. And rightly so. I think you've done your part for Bond, and more than your part. You've done my part. You've done Steve's part. But yeah, so that is the final tally. We couldn't get to 800 million or a billion, but it doesn't change the fact that James Bond will return.
Yes. Another thing I have here, special for License to Kill. Back in October, I got the 2021 Deluxe Edition package for the MI6 HQ magazine. They just put out for John Glenn License to Kill issue. This one is all about License to Kill.
Oh my no!
Special publication number 5.
Where did you get that? How do I get that?
It's so what's the name of the MI6 Confidential magazine, but I found out about it on MI6 HQ website, and they have different packages you can get. You could do back order packages of the previous magazines. They've had I think like 60 volumes. They got like 5 of them over there that I got for last year, and this is a specialty one they just put out at the end of the year that's shipping now. And I believe you could buy the individual issues if you go to mi6confidential.com.
Oh, wow. And I do see, like, how can you say no to that particular Oreo that you have on the back?
You have tons of information all about this movie in particular. So it comes out to 98 pages.
That is glorious. I would love to get my hands on that. That's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Oh, I just preparing. I was watching the clip with Timothy Dalton explaining his take on James Bond in the Everything or Nothing documentary. Just fantastic, describing Bond as a cold-blooded killer who was the hero, and how he went back in terms of his characterizations being more serious and adhering more to, or at least playing more reverence to the original source material, Ian Fleming's works. And it's like Timothy Dalton knows what's up. And I
don't think I've seen that documentary yet.
Oh, I highly recommend it. And when you do see it, we should talk about it. Because it's up there with that Daniel Craig retrospective, the Being Bond. It's a really, really good production. I don't know if it's available on any of the releases, like on any of the disc releases.
It's not. I think it's something you have to get separately.
Yeah, but I forget where I did see it. I may have sailed the 7 seas of the internet to find it, but it is available. And now that Amazon is, how is the Amazon deal going? Do you know?
I don't know.
I hate to put you on the spot.
The last news was when those like the Teamsters and people like that were drafted a letter to put a stop to it, but I don't think that'll have an effect. So I don't. And they never announced when they expected the sale to close. But they announced it, I believe, on May 31st. So I wouldn't expect it should be too long, because the version of part of MGM they're buying is hell of a lot smaller than Fox when Disney bought that, and that only took, I think, 8-9 months to close that sale. So,
but there's still a lot of studios involved. Like, you still have to go, like MGM, United Artists, Sony. Apparently, the distribution rights are different. Like even with No Time to Die, in terms of the opening of the Universal distribution versus the Sony distribution.
No. So Universal bought the rights to all the films in the franchise in 2018, but it does not include the 4K rights to the first 4 Craig films, which I believe are still owned by Sony or Fox, one of the two.
Okay.
Because all the old Bond DVDs are from 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. So I don't know where it lies now, but a lot of those deals expired a long time ago because they're all constantly shifting studios.
For sure. Oh, absolutely. Licensing rights. They're nowhere to plant a flag because it will drift to sea. I just wanted to say hi to the chat. Hi, everyone in the chat. We will say hello and feature you guys prominently after we do the recap. So please stick around to the end of the show. And also, if you do enjoy what we do here, like, subscribe, comment, share, tell your friends, all of the things that people do on the internet to promote their corners. And our 007 corner is one of them, I have to say. So, without further ado, you want to go to a wedding, Kat?
Maybe.
Well, we're gonna.
So it starts with this ridiculously cheesy 80s wedding. And everybody's like lined up outside the church, and they're all waiting, and they're getting worried. Where's Felix? We see that Bond and Felix are getting in an airplane, and they're taking off. And getting worried whether or not there's going to be enough time to get to the wedding. And Bond's like, oh, don't worry, we got this handled. It's not going to be a big deal. Or not getting a plane, they're getting a helicopter. One of those heavy load lift helicopters.
Well, okay, hang on a second. I think you're jumping ahead, and you are the expert on this one, but I adore and savor every part of this film. So you get Felix and Bond, and in between them is Sharky, who I assume is some sort of quarrel stand-in. And they are in the back of a limousine that is headed to this cheesy 80s wedding. They're not sure if they're going to make it on time. Felix is worried whether or not Bond has the ring. And then all of a sudden, the helicopter in question pulls up or like flies up beside them because they're on a bridge because it's in Florida. And they're like, Bond is like, who is that? And Felix is like, those are my partners from the DEA. They land on the bridge and they say, Sanchez is in the Bahamas. And it's like, well, then we got to go. So machine guns are thrown around and Bond is like, I'm coming with you. And Felix is like, okay, but only as an observer. So they get on the helicopter and they head to the Bahamas, which apparently is only about a 15-minute jaunt away from Florida.
About depending on what you're flying, yeah.
I honestly don't know the geography, but keep going.
It would be a bit longer.
So they go and they land, and Bond is told to wait in the helicopter, and Sharky, I think, has to go and tell Felix's betrothed, Della, who is played by the lovely Tracy from Three's Company, or the topless psychic from Mallrats, Priscilla Barnes. I believe these are her 3 claims to fame. I like her as a presence. If you are looking for a budget Sharon Stone, look no further than Priscilla Barnes. And so they get to the Bahamas. Felix says to Bond, wait in the helicopter. And then there's the slow motion running at the camera with machine guns.
And now I remember why I don't remember much of this pre-title sequence, because it was very Miami Vice.
Yes. No argument.
I do remember the part, though, where Sanchez gets in the airplane and he's trying to make his escape from the Bahamas. And he takes off. He's flying, and Bond and Felix decide they're going to chase him in this load lift helicopter. Problem is, you have to attach the cable with a grappling hook cable on it. And Bond, of course, is the daredevil. He's like, yeah, I didn't come all this way just to, watch Felix. So Bond takes it upon himself to get out of the helicopter. And you can tell he's got a parachute on, and they're not trying to hide it or anything. But he's got the parachute underneath, and he has to kind of do this weirdo skydiving thing out of the plane to get onto out of the helicopter to get onto the tail of Sanchez's plane with this hook and hook the thing on. And he does it, and it looks awesome because it's like as usual, they're trying to do these stunts for real. And Sanchez hears the noise. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's looking around, and Bond just kind of hooks the thing up like it's no big deal. And immediately the plane starts creating drag behind the helicopter, and it's like it goes kind of inverted like this, and Bond is still kind of struggling to hang on. And all of a sudden they're back flying over the wedding, over the church, and they look up in the air, and Felix actually smiles down at his bride, and she smiles back because she just knows it's Felix. And that's when they decide that he tells his buddies that he's got to go. So he jumps out of the helicopter, the parachute. He signals to Bond. Bond lets go of the plane and skydives as well. They do their very 80s parachute landing outside the church to get married, while the helicopter takes away Sanchez.
Which is, yes, exactly. And they land and they walk into the church. But the thing, and I think this is key in finding out what's going on with Lupe in terms of her relationship with Sanchez, and maybe why she is so taken by Bond later on in the film, is that the reason that Sanchez is in the Bahamas, because he's been evading Felix.
That was great. He goes, she's been cheating on him with some guy.
And
he found out about it and went there. And he's like, oh, did he promise you his heart? Well, then I'll give him your heart, kind of thing. And Dario's there, played by Benicio del Toro, who's awesome. I wish he had more to do in this movie. He's just evil, and he's so sadistic and perfect. And then Sanchez, of course, starts whipping Lupe, and he leaves her behind though when he leaves, which is because he's told that hey, we gotta get the hell out of here. And she's left to go, I guess, back on the wave crest at some point because he just kind of leaves her there, which is why he takes off in the plane and ends up getting caught. He wasn't being careful.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget Sanchez, played by the inimitable
Robert Davi.
Robert Davi from Die Hard or Goonies.
Yes. Great 80s villain.
Well, but also, and you're right, like when people do bring up the fact that it is a very 1980s film and it is Miami Vice, I agree, just because it leans very heavy into sort of that drugs are bad, drug dealers are bad, we got to go fight them, and it's going to end up being a lot of sandals and no socks and money excess, almost Scarface-ish. So it is, again, for a James Bond of its time. And so I can understand the complaint, but we'll get into that when it gets even deeper into it. So yeah, no, Felix and Bond, they parachute after hooking the airplane that Sanchez was trying to escape in something that was very reminiscent, or not reminiscent, I would say the prototype to the action scene at the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises. And then we have...
That's how they did that too in the movie. I mean, they trick you in the movie to think that it's an airplane dragging it, but they actually used a heavy load lift helicopter.
Okay.
Like, same type they're using in License to Kill.
And so, yeah, they go into the church for Felix and Della to become Mr. and Mrs. Leiter. And then we get the Gladys Knight theme song.
Yeah, this is the one I don't have in my iPod. The only one I don't have in my iPod.
Wow. I only say wow because I didn't know people still had iPods. I thought all the people's music was on their phones.
I don't know. I feel like this is a movie where you didn't need to have the title of the movie and the lyrics because it doesn't sound very lyrical. The License to Kill, just trying to do that and it just doesn't work. At least for me, it doesn't. It's like I think they could have maybe used a different song.
I really enjoy it.
It is definitely. It's just that
for sure.
I don't think that clearly they're trying to use the title as the main chorus line, and I just don't think it works as well lyrically or in a song.
Well, and also in terms of the title song, there was I was informed, so I don't know I don't have all the details. It was more of a conversational. Did you know that this was there was legal battles over it having ripped off the riffs, like the musical sort of influence of Goldfinger, which makes sense to me. I didn't find it to be that close, but if you can find a way to make Goldfinger a lyric, I'm pretty sure License to Kill can fit the bill as well.
Well, she also made, Shirley Bassey made that a lyric because she was dragging out the name of the title as well, like Goldfinger, like that. She doesn't really, Gladys Knight doesn't really do that with License to Kill. She just kind of says the title, it's like, eh. Anyway, I didn't really care for it.
Okay.
Whatever. So then we come out of the title scene to find that Sanchez is being interrogated, and you have this guy there who's, he's a DEA agent, and he's pretending to be all tough on him and things. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get you for this tangent, blah, blah, blah. And they decide that they're gonna have to move him. So they take him outside, and of course you have all these reporters there. One of them, you keep hearing this lady say, "Oh, Sanchez, can we get a picture?" And at one point, he turns around like this and kind of smiles to the camera. And then people are asking him, "Oh, do you agree to be extradited? Oh, what's going on?" And of course, he doesn't say anything. And then they chain him up in the back of this truck to make sure the chain's tight. The DEA agent gets out of the back and gets to ride shotgun, literally, while the other agents stay in the back, and they start driving this convoy. As they start driving across this bridge, presumably they're I think they're near the Keys or something like that, because it's certainly not Miami. And so they're driving along, and all of a sudden the DEA agent riding shotgun attacks the driver, and he veers the truck off the bridge, crashing it through this really cheap. You can tell the bridge was under some type of construction because there was like a cheap little wooden fence line for it, and he rips through it, crashes underwater, And you see this mini sub that says Wave Crest on it coming up alongside the truck. They go inside, and you have these scuba divers in there. They break Sanchez free, give him a oxygen mask, and they take off in their little mini sub. Whereas all the military guys and the DEA guys up above on the bridge are starting to go down and take them out. The helicopter lands. They start sending divers down there. They can't find anything except for the truck, and Sanchez is gone. And the mini sub, of course, is already long gone. And so it's like, oh, it's a disaster. So meanwhile, Bond is at the end. This is not long after the wedding, because they're just finished up the wedding festivities for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And Felix and his new wife Della are going back into their house, and Bond's bidding goodbye, and she's like, oh, Bond, and she pulls off like her pantyhose and pulls up her underwear, and she's like, oh, Bond, you know what this is? She's like, I don't really want this. She's turning around to leave, and then she tosses it to him anyway. She's like, oh, the next person to catch it gets to be the gets married next, or gets hitched, kind of like when you throw the flowers, except for some reason she wants to throw her underwear, which is kind of weird.
No, but that's a tradition.
Is it?
It is a tradition. I've been to a couple of weddings. The whole idea is that it's supposed to be like, well, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it has been a thing where the bride sits in a chair around in the middle of the festivities, and the groom, as the bride, sort of hikes up her dress to show her leg where her garter belt is, and the groom is supposed to take it off, pull it off with his teeth.
I've never heard that before. I've never seen it.
Maybe it's regional.
Maybe it might be. So she tosses it, and Bond catches it, and he pretends to be kind of happy and leaves. And she turns to Felix. She's like, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, he was married once. But he doesn't go into details. And so this is them tying it back in to Majesty's in a way. And so it's like making sense that even though it's a new Bond, obviously new era, that it's still the same basic backstory for this character. And so she's like, okay. So they go inside the house. Bond is already driven away, and no sooner than they walk in, they find themselves at gunpoint. And then Dario's there, and then they're kind of like all upset. And then Sanchez is there, and they're like, oh, Sanchez wants to see you, kind of thing. He's like, no, take me, not my wife, type of thing. And they take her into the other room, and Felix is like screaming, no, whatever. So they take him down to this dock house. It's where the Wave Crest is. Has a Wave Crest signage on it. They go inside. And Felix is blindfolded, and he's being taken over to this trap door. He's hooked up on these chains. Sanchez is there with Dario, and the trap door opens, and they're dangling him on there. And they take the blindfold off Felix, and he sees that the DEA agent in there. It's like, oh, you motherfucker! And he's like, well, $2 million is a lot of money, Felix, and he's just gonna take the money. And Felix sees that Dario was there with Sanchez, and he's like, well, what'd you do with my wife? And Dario's like, oh, don't worry, we sent her on a nice honeymoon. It's like, that's so good.
Oh, it's terrible and terrifying, though. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, no, we tortured and killed her. It's like, it's so implied. And then, like, Felix is like, killing me won't do anything. And Sanchez is like, oh, no, there are worse things than dying, my friend.
And then they take out this bloody piece of, like, fish, and they throw it into the water to attract the sharks. And then they lower him in, and then Sanchez is like, oh, don't worry, Felix, this is the first day of the rest of your life. And the sharks start eating them, and you could tell even the DA agent is kind of, he doesn't really have a strong stomach for this, even though he's the one who arranged it. And so Dario and Sanchez leave, and this guy is tasked, and the DA agent has to stay there until they get him a proper, avenue out. So yeah, you just stay here, hide, whatever, no big deal. So the next morning, Bond is going back to the airport. He's supposed to fly back to MI6. He's supposed to go to Istanbul for his next mission. And there's like a whole commotion going on outside the airport. And he asks the lady at the ticket counter, he's like, what's going on? She's like, oh, some drug guy, some drug baron or whatever broke out of jail or something like that. And Bond and she looks up, and Bond's already gone. So he races back to Felix's house, pulls his gun, goes inside, doesn't see anything, he sees her shoe her high heel shoe on the ground. He opens the door, and then he's like, Della! And this little soap opera moment, which felt a little bit of a soap opera moment, the way he says it. He runs down to the bed, and he sees that they roll her over, and her face is just kind of, And he's like, okay, he sees that she's dead. He goes into Felix's office, and it's been trashed, which is interesting, because the rest of the house is kind of not trashed. And so he sees that there's this big wrapped up piece of paper on the couch, and Bond knows what it is. So he opens it, and it's Felix all bloodied, and you have it's a Live and Let Die reference, of course. Because a scene that was from the book Live and Let Die that is not in the movie, but there's a note that's been left in the body that says he disagreed with something that ate him.
Mhm.
And the phone starts ringing at the time. Bond answers it, and he's like, "Oh, get an ambulance down here quick." So then you have the crime scene tape. The police, the ambulance are trying to keep all the neighbors away, and they're like, "Oh, we'll get him down to the hospital. We'll find out what's going on." And they're like, "Yeah, Sanchez escaped." So they go down to the hospital to find out answers, and one of the guys, one of the investigators on the case, thought, "Oh, it's just chainsaws. That's what the Colombians use all the time." And of course, when they get to the hospital, and the doctor pretends he doesn't know. He's like, "I'm not really sure what it is." And Sharky's like, "Oh, bullshit. I know a shark bite when I see one." And then Bond is kind of surprised by that. And he's like, "Well, should we get on it?" It's like, "Yeah, we probably will." And there's another agent there, FBI guy. He's like, "Yeah, Bond, we can't really, there's other countries that would shelter him, but we can't really go there. It's not our jurisdiction." He's like, "Well, do you have laws against what they did to Felix?" He's like, "Oh, come on, Sharky, we'll investigate this ourselves." So it cuts to them driving up to this warehouse, and he says this odd line, like, "This is the last place in the Keys." I don't know what other places they were checking in particular, but okay. So Sharky stays in the car. But Bond goes up to the door. He knocks on the door, and he's knocking a little bit. This guy comes to answer, and we see inside that Milton Crest is there, played by Anthony Zerbe. Very great casting here for this guy. And he tells the corrupt DA agent he's still waiting there for his boat out of there. He's like, "No, stay in the office. You stay back here." And this guy opens the door. He's like, "We're closed." And Bond's like, "Oh wait, I have a big order for whatever this crazy exotic fish is from Universal Exports." He shows his card, and here Milton's like, "Ah, let him come in." And he's like, "Ah, sorry, you're out of luck. We haven't sold great white sharks or any sharks in years." He's like, "Here, we genetically engineer fish here to feed the poor people in third world countries." Clearly too tiny of an operation for that to be believed. But Bond's, of course, not interested, and he's looking around, and Milton can see that there's something suspicious about it. And he's like, "Well, maybe I'm really busy right now, so maybe we could talk about this another time." And Bond's like, "Oh, sure." And he tries to introduce himself, but Milton kind of blows him off. He doesn't want to tell him who he is. And Bond is shown out and doesn't notice all the cigarettes and black ashes left on the from where the trap door is, because they put a table over it, but we get to see that. So he leaves, and he gets back in the car with Sharky, and they're like, "Okay, we need to investigate this place." So that night, they sneak back in on this little boat, and they spot the mini sub pulling in, which is something else that Milton said he had. He's like, "Oh, yeah, it's from my shark hunting days. We're looking to sell it, blah, blah, blah." So Bond sneaks into the place after dark, and he's almost immediately cornered by the same guy who was the doorman, security guard. Bond gets the better of him, kills him. The corrupt DA agent guy comes up. Bond's getting a fight, and Bond gets the upper hand because Sharky comes up through this little trap door in the dockhouse, knocking the DA agent off his feet. And Bond knocks the guy back, and he grabs onto the same rope and chain that Felix did as Bond kicks open the trap door. And he's like, "Oh, no, let me go." And Bond's like, "Oh, where is he?" Sanchez, "I don't know. He's long gone. I'm just waiting for my ride out of here, blah, blah, blah." And he's just like, "Take the money. You can keep it." And Sharky actually looks at the briefcase like, "Oh, cool. There's like millions of dollars in here." But Bond instead just really angrily just picks it up, and he's like, "No. You keep it. You earned it." And he tosses it to him, knocking the guy into the water, and he gets eaten by the sharks. And then you have a great punchline where Sharky looks at that and is like, "Oh man, that's a damn waste. All that money."
Bond is incensed.
Yes, Bond is incensed, but he lost the money. So the next day, he goes back down to Sharky's boat, and they're like, "Okay, we have to investigate this wave crest thing and find out more information." But he's headed off by the FBI guy or DA guy, or whoever this guy's with, and he pulls him aside, takes him for a little walk, and he's like, "Yeah, Bond, we found out something that happened at the doghouse the other day. There's a dead DA agent, some money, the crazy stuff. We can't really brush too much under the rug anymore. You're gonna have to let this go." And he's like, "Oh, I can't let you let this go." Guy kind of gets mad at him, and then he gets cornered by these three other agents. And he's like, "Sorry, Bond, your little adventure ends here." And for some reason, they take him to the Hemingway house. This is famous for being one of Ernest Hemingway's houses where he would write a lot of books. And Hemingway had allowed all of these species of cats he had there just to breed like crazy. And so to this day, you go there's like hundreds of cats on this estate. And they're all there. And they take Bond inside. They take him to the upper level. And Bond sees there's like a gunman in a guard tower. It's got like a bunch of bars around it, though. And you can tell Bond's plotting his escape, trying to figure out how he's going to get out of here. And then you see that he's being walked up to M, of all people, who's here. And M's not having it. And he's like, "You were supposed to be in Istanbul last night. What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, somebody has to stop Sanchez." He's like, "No, you don't. Just give me that sentimental crap." And he's like, he doesn't want to hear any of it. And it's like,
Well,
you're gonna get on a flight to Istanbul this afternoon, and that's it. And Bond's like, and what about Felix? It's like, oh, forget it. Don't give me more of that bullshit. And so Bond's like, fine, then I'll resign. And he's like, this isn't a country club, 007. And he's like, that's it. I'm revoking your license to kill is revoked, and I'm confiscating. Hand over your weapon and the rest of your IDs, and you know that the Office of Secrecy is still applies. I mean, he still can't say anything. And so Bond's like, he pretends to cooperate, and then instead he just kicks the guards out of the way, jumps off the balcony into the bushes, and M stops them from shooting him, saying, we can't, there's too many people around, which is true. Because, again, why did they think the Hemingway house would be the place to have this meeting with apparently a very angry rogue agent? And oddly, despite that M was very upset with Bond, as Bond is running away, M says, oh my God, be with you, Commander Bond. I'm like, what? It's like now he's rooting for him to succeed, maybe?
Well, but this is a different sort of situation, because the last 5 James Bond movies have had rogue James Bond. It just seems to be a thing that happened in the Daniel Craig era. When James Bond wanted to get things done, he never did anything for Her Majesty's Secret Service. He just went and did whatever he wanted. This is the first time that James Bond has ever gone rogue. In fact, in the teaser for the movie, it says his bad side is a dangerous place to be. And it's like, no, he's not doing this for king and country. He's doing queen and country. He's doing this out of friendship and revenge for Felix, which I thought was great.
Yeah, well, that's also something I forgot to mention, is that the original title for the longest time was License Revoked. And that was heavily featured in the marketing, making it clear that this was a rogue mission. And then they changed it at like near the last second to License to Kill. Apparently they thought that Americans wouldn't know what the word revoked means.
Or Gladys Knight thought it was going to be a worse title for a song.
Yeah, I get that dim.
Got license revoked.
Okay. So Bond takes off and he goes back to meet with Sharky, and they're going to sneak aboard. You find this Wave Crest. So we cut to the Wave Crest, and it's Milton Crest's personal ship, and he's got Lupe there. She's in her cabin, and Milton goes to talk to her, and he's like, you cost me an awful lot of money with, you having that little tryst, and, Sanchez getting captured, and me having to pay off all these people to get him out, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, forget it, get out of here. He doesn't care. He'll pay you the money back. And he's still upset about it. She's like, oh, get out of here. Basically challenges him, like, you don't have the balls to really say anything about it. But he's like, you know how many other broads there have been just like you? You're just another one. You're, disposed. It's like, get the hell out of here. And he's a little kind of jumped up little shit anyway. So he kind of does get the hell out of there. It doesn't really bother her. So the captain comes and calls Milton up to he's like, oh, we've seen something on the right. You need to come see this. And he looks, and it's like a manta ray. It's like, what's this damn manta ray? Just get the hell moving. Don't worry about it. And of course, it's not just a manta ray. It's Bond having gotten something, I guess, compliments of Sharky, a big manta ray-like costume. And you see that he's wearing flippers underneath it. And
I thought it was a real manta ray.
Well, because he's underneath it, and he grabs the thing and throws it off of him.
That's true. Okay, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, kind of like a bigger thing. So he throws the thing off of him, and he swims up and boards the Wave Crest, which has the mini sub can dock underneath it, kind of like with the Disco Volante. So Bond's able to get up through there, and he hides and ducks around to avoid Milton's guys, and he sees that they got some money there, and they're getting ready to load some of the drugs, which they keep inside the pressurized chamber, and he sees that. I don't think he did anything to the drugs while he was in there, but he does sneak into Lupe's room, and he asks, and he sees that she's been whipped, and he says, what, does Sanchez do that? She's like, oh, you got to get out of here. You need to stay here. He's like, oh, whatever. And then Milton starts knocking on the door because, guys are like searching the boat because they know that somebody's here now. Bond has already knocked out a couple guys. And so Bond keeps the knife at her back. He's like, you better not say anything. And then she opens the door, and Milton's there, and he's like, you seen anything? There's something weird going on. She lies, and sure enough, Milton doesn't have the balls to go inside and search her suite. And he's like, okay. So he closes the door, and he keeps looking, and they can't find anybody. So the next morning, Bond is still hiding out Lupe's room in the cabin, and he sneaks out to see what's going on, and we see that the exchange is happening where you have this little float plane pulling up alongside the Wave Crest, and they're going to take off with the money after the drug has been delivered. So Bond decides, I got to put a stop to this, but before he can really do anything, he finds out that Sharky has been killed. And he sees them
Well,
being hauled up outside the boat on the wave crest, hauled up on these ropes. And one of the guys callously says, "Hey, you're never going to believe this. The guy's name was actually Sharky." And of course, he shouldn't have said that because that really pisses off Bond because he comes around the corner, sees the guy, shoots him with a spear gun, I believe. And then Milton's like, "What the fuck?" And then and then it's on. So the plane is just about to take off. So Bond decides, kills a couple goons out of his way, jumps onto this float plane as it's seeing down the way, and it starts taking off into the air. And Bond's trying to reach up inside the plane, and he sees that that one of the guards looking outside can't really see anything, but he's holding on to the door. So Bond comes around the other door, kicks inside, and hits the emergency hatch. So that way, the door that the guy riding shotgun on the plane is holding on to immediately gets detached from the plane, and he falls out. And it's like, oh man, that's badass. So Bond gets on the plane, and the other pilot, and they get in this fight, and the pilot tries to dive the plane down, rocket around to try and get him off, but Bond eventually gets him, knocking him out of the way and takes off with the money.
Well, but then also at this point, like, because Bond is used, because they were transporting the money and the drugs in like watertight, sealed, contained, like plastic wrap.
That's right.
And
he blocks the gunshot.
With that, and so because of that, there's like $100 bills just flow, or maybe $20 bills. They did say that it was $2 million in 20s, so it's hard to trace. Although that's not $2 million in the briefcase or the suitcase that was given to them, but never mind. So there's money flying all around the cabin, and Bond is with glee, just reaching into this thing and being like, boom, and he's throwing it out of the cabin. And also, he's kind of rich now. He does not need any assistance from the government. He's already used all of the James Bond skills to get on the plane. You forgot the water skiing with the harpoon, yo. And he's just gone. So anyway, we flash back to London. And M comes up to Moneypenny and is like, there are 5 typing errors on the first page alone. What has gotten into you? And she says that Bond has gone missing. He's left. There's been no record of him leaving Miami, but apparently he's not in Miami. And so he says, well, don't you worry. He knows how to take care of himself, whatever. So Moneypenny calls and says, get me Q branch, please, which... foreshadowing.
Yes. So meanwhile, we cut to Bond. He goes back to Felix's house because he knows I think he go back because there's the caution tape is still outside and there's police standing out front because he goes in to use his computer. Because that's how he finds out about Pam Bouvier, because she was the one who we find out later was working for Felix. So yes. He sneaks into Felix's house again and he gets access to his computer. And he's looking at all these other CIA agents that he's had trying to track Sanchez. And next to them all, they say deceased, deceased, deceased. And he's like, oh shit, the Sanchez guy's killed a lot of, CIA. And at the bottom of the list is Pam Bouvier, who's still listed as active, saying that she's going to be in Isthmus, which is, I believe this is the final occasion in a Bond film where they use a fictional country as a location. And it has the date when she's going to be there. And Bond's like, okay, so he knows this. And it must have said something else about where he could meet her, because the very next scene is him leaving and going to the dockside restaurant, like the restaurant and bar where Pam is, because she's having the rendezvous with Dario and Dario's other henchman, some other guy that's there. Braun.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe I jumped ahead. No, you didn't jump ahead.
Okay. No, that was right, because it was after the plane thing that we went back to London and we found out that, he left, blah, 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 and they're like, M's like, we don't need to worry about it. So yeah, that's when he sneaks back into Felix's house. He gets the information on the computer, finds out where Pam's going to be. So he goes to the stockhouse that night and he finds her there, and she's meeting into this kind of rough tumble type saloon where she's meeting Dario and this other henchman to find out what's going on. And Bond's sitting at their table. And he kind of sweet talks his way into this conversation. And Dario's getting kind of suspicious because he's really, sadistic and sick. And Pam ends up pulling a gun on him from under the table.
A shotgun.
Yeah, she pulls a shotgun from under the table. It's like, oh shit. And the other guy's looking a bit Braun's looking a bit sketchy, so Bond just kind of punches him out, and he's like, he won't have, and so when the waiter comes up, Bond's like, he's not going to have anything to drink, he's had too much. And the waiter clearly saw Bond do this, but he doesn't care, because it's just that type of rough and tumble saloon. But because of that, it's not very long before Dario, literally flips the tables on them, and then we get involved in this really big fight inside the saloon. Bullets are flying. They're beating each other up. And at one point, they blast a hole in the back of the building. And so Pam and Bond rush out, and they get onto her little motorboat and try and take off. She gets shot in the back, and Bond's kind of freaking out about that. He turns back and shoots one of the guards who's coming out, and Dario gives this really sadistic look, and he's like licking his teeth like some crazy, totally crazy guy, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like he's just like a cartoon character or something, which is wonderful.
Yes.
So he's driving away in the boat, and Pam starts to get up, and Bond's like, "Don't move." And she's like, "Oh, relax. It's Kevlar. It's wonderful stuff." It's like, "Oh, you could have been killed, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, relax, not a big deal type of thing. So they decide that they're going to go to Isthmus together. So they go there.
Wait. Before we move on, Carrie Lowell as Pam Bouvier, at this point, is almost my favorite Bond girl. When she has sort of like the shoulder length hair, almost my favorite Bond girl. So they go to Isthmus. In terms, aside from the kind of cringy line being like, "I've flown into some of the worst hellholes in South America," like that was a little like cliched. But in terms of looks, in terms of gumption, this is no shrinking violet of a Bond girl, I may tell you. This woman's been shot in the back, and she said, "No biggie." So, yeah, no, she's kind of awesome.
Well, she's wearing
Well, because she's wearing Kevlar, she's smoking hot, she's outgunning most of the people in the Roadhouse movie that we just crashed into.
That's true.
And she's not intimidated by Dario at all, no matter how fucking creepy he is. And yeah. And then when they, like the boat that Bond pulled up in, no, it was Pam's boat, but it's like, oh, out of gas. I haven't heard that one in a while. And it's like, well, they must have cut everything about this is like putting them almost on equal footing until they get to Isthmus, which is sort of a cultural thing. But yeah, no, she's awesome.
All right. I found her kind of bland. So we go to Isthmus, and it's basically...
She's a hell of a lot better than Goodhead. Holly Goodhead has nothing on Pam
they're both bland. Anyway, so we go to Isthmus, which is basically a stand-in for Panama, for various reasons, as you could tell. So anyway, Bond goes there, and first place he visits is the bank, because he's still got all the money that he stole from the plane. So and of course the bank manager's super excited that Bond's bringing in like $5 million cash and loading in their vaults, and they're so excited. "Oh, Mr. Bond, we'll hook you up with the best hotel. You're gonna love it. Blah blah blah." He's like, "Oh, okay, great." So first thing Bond decides to do is, well, before he decides to do anything, actually, he sees Pam walk in there, and his eyes kind of go wide, like, "Oh shit, what are you doing here?" And in
the bank? In the bank?
In the bank.
No. Before they go to the bank, they go and they check in at a hotel, and Bond says, "Where does Sanchez bank?" And Pam says, "At the Banco de Isthmus. It's the biggest bank in town, and Sanchez owns it." And he's like, "Okay, well, go get yourself some decent clothes because you're going to be my executive assistant." And she's like, "What do you mean? Why can't you be my executive assistant?" And Bond is like, "We're south of the border now. It's a man's world. You might as well have said man talk, dink," and slapped her on the bum as she went shopping. But no, so she goes, and then when he goes and drops off to make the deposit in the bank, then Pam Bouvier comes in with the pixie cut. And this is where Pam Bouvier became my favorite Bond girl. She is the best.
Why?
Because she's smoking hot. She took a shot to the back, shotgun shot. Like all of these things. She is on par. She's pushing back against Bond, but she's capable. She's playing along, not playing along. She has something to do here too. They both have it out for the guy who killed Felix, or killed Felix's wife and horribly maimed Felix. Like this is everything about this is great.
So Bond goes to the casino.
Yes.
And he starts playing, and he's winning, and we notice there's this guy watching him from the next table. And he keeps following Bond around the casino. He's watching. He's getting really bothered by it. And at one point when he's playing cards, Pam is looking at him. She's like, "Oh, you gonna share some of that money?" And he's like, and he gives her some, and he's like, go get me Martini, shaken, not stirred. And he's really angry about it because he doesn't like the fact that she came here to the casino because he's here to confront Sanchez, and she still hasn't really told him what her deal is here. So she goes over to the counter at the bar and does this really weird somewhat racist thing, maybe, where even though the barman is speaking perfectly good English, albeit with an accent, she's like, "No, I want it shaken, not stirred." And I'm
Oh
like,
no,
"What are you doing, lady?"
I don't think that that was a mishap of communication. I think that that was sort of a wink to the audience of having a hot woman do this. Because she does. She's like shaken, not stirred. So I think it's
The way
like,
she's saying it to the barman who speaks fine English, it's like she's doing it as if he doesn't understand. Like, oh, it's shaken, it's not stirred. And I'm like, okay, lady, that was a bit much. So they bring the martini. They're going to bring the martinis back to the table. Before they do, Vaughn catches the attention of Sanchez, who's up inside his office, and he's asking Heller. He's like, what's this guy?" He's like, "Oh, they bring him to Sanchez's attention because like this guy walked in. He's putting a lot of money on the table and he's winning. Should we stop him?" He's like, "No, let him keep playing." And then he wins up to $250,000, and guy comes back up there again. "Should we stop it?" "No, let him keep playing." And afterwards, have him come see me. We'll see what's going on. And he's kind of watching and covertly kind of paying attention. And so Bond ends up winning all the money that he wants. He's getting ready to leave, and he sees Lupe there, and she sees him.
oh no, that's not true. Sanchez sends Lupe to the table because the previous dealer was like he was winning, and then Lupe shows up, but Lupe hasn't tipped off Sanchez that she knows who Bond is from the Bahamas. And Bond is like, "What are you doing here?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm just here to make sure that you stop winning." And he's like, "Am I going to lose?" And not much. And then Bond starts losing again. And so he's like, "Well, then I'm going to go."
Yeah, so you're going to go see Sanchez.
Yeah.
And she thinks this is suicide. Lupe thinks this is suicide. And she's like, "No, you should get on a plane and get out of the country." He's like, "No, I can't really do that." And it's like, I need to see this guy. She's like, she's kind of reluctant about it. But he goes up to see Sanchez anyway. And Sanchez agrees to see him. And of course, they take Bond's gun and his passport, and Sanchez is looking through it, and he's got this pet iguana on his shoulder with a diamond necklace and these big armor-plated glass windows. And Bond's kind of looking at that, and he's kind of sizing the place up. And Sanchez is looking through his passport. He's like, "Man, you've really been around." And pistol, what's this about? Bond's like, "Well, it's useful in my line of work." And Sanchez is like, well, what's that? He's like, I solve problems for people." He's like, "Really?" It's like, "Well, I eliminate the problems." And then Sanchez kind of laughs like, "Ah." And the other guys do this nervous kind of like villain laugh, and they kind of like it. And Bond's like, I heard that you really respect loyalty, Mr. Sanchez. And I really like that." And Sanchez is like, "Okay, but why don't you hang around here a couple of days? You can keep playing in the casino if you want, but I'm going to hold on to your passport and hold on to your gun. This is a really safe city. You don't need to worry about that." As if to imply you have our protection while you're here. And he pats him on the back, and Bond's kind of cordial and leaves. And no sooner than he closes the door, he turns to Heller, on his right hand man, Colonel Heller. He's like, "Check him out." He's like, "Okay." So Bond goes to and leaves, and he meets Pam Bouvier out front, and she's like, "What'd you learn?" And he's like, "Guy's like in an armored fortress. It's going to take a cannon to get through to him." So they take off in the cab, but then we see that mysterious other player from the casino walk out, and he's kind of looking at him, staring daggers at Bond, and starts following him. So Pam and Bond go back to the hotel. They're going to check in, and then the concierge is like, "Oh, Mr. Bond, your uncle arrived. We already sent him up to your room for you." He's like, "Okay." So he starts walking towards the elevator. Pam's like, "Your uncle?" And Bond's like, "Yeah, come here." So they get in the elevator, and he's like, "I need a gun. You have a gun?" And then she tears away like this little, it's like one of those special tearaway skirts that are like the sticky kind of Velcro types. And she pulls out this tiny little, I think it's not even a Beretta. It's like a real
like a
tiny,
Derringer.
like a Derringer almost. Not the typical design. It's designed to look more like a mini pistol as opposed to your traditional Derringer. So he takes the gun, and they go up to his room, and he barges in, and right there he just grabs the guy, knocks him back in the chair, and tips it over, and of course it's Q. And Bond's like, "Q, what the hell are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I was on leave, and I heard Moneypenny thought you might need some help." And Bond's like, "Oh, geez." And then Pam walks in, and she's like, "Pam, this is my uncle Q. Q, this is my cousin Pam." And then they go, and Q, being the gentleman that he is, goes to introduce himself. He's like, "Oh, it seems that we're related." And he goes to kiss her on the cheek, which I thought was pretty funny. And then Bond's like, Bond's like, "Q, Bond's kind of upset about this, like really incensed. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing here, kid?" It's like, "What do you want?" It's like, "Oh, come on, Bond, I brought you some toys." He's like, "Don't you get it? If it weren't for Q Branch, you would have been dead long ago." One of his best lines. And Bond kind of reluctantly calms down a bit at that because it's true. So Q opens the bag and he reveals a few fun toys. He's got Dentonite toothpaste, the latest in plastic explosives. He's got the cigarettes, which you can unspool the actual explosive wire to it for the plastic explosives. Did he give him the gun that's
coated? Yeah, the optical gun.
Yeah. He gave him that. A few other
optical gun with the palm reader, so no one can use it.
Yeah, and he gives him an explosive alarm clock, guaranteed to never wake up anyone who uses it. And Bond's kind of appreciative of these things. He's like, "Oh, Q, I'm gonna put you on a plane in the morning. You're gonna get out of here." And he's like, "Well, hope you enjoy your night, Q." But then Pam takes the other room with a single bed. And she's like, "Oh, good night," and she slams the door. And then Bond's like, "Oh, geez, I hope you don't snore, Q." And then they go back into the room with the 2 double beds.
See, and then we just have a couple of more cards dropped as to why Pam is awesome, is because not only does she have the tearaway dress that turns into a mini skirt with the garter that has the secret holster that has the not a Derringer automatic gun, and then she busts in to find out if she needs to clean up after whatever Bond was going into, but then she shuts down Bond, is like, no, that ain't the thing. And I'm pretty sure they had sex on the boat earlier.
I think they did.
Yeah. So she is. Oh, if you are making a spin-off James Bond movie with your Bond girl, Pam Bouvier is the prototype.
I'll get to why I don't like her a little bit later. So
yeah, please do. I can't.
So then we cut back to the casino, and we find out that part of the scam is that in order to launder the money, they're using this religious guy. I love how they're making fun of all of those guys like Joel Osteen, Benny Hinn, and those kind of pricks who prey on gullible people to give them millions of dollars just so they could selfishly put it in their banks and live in mega mansions and buy jets and all that kind of shit. And the role is played by Wayne Newton, which is awesome. And his character name is Joe Butcher. And the way it works is that Sanchez has a financial advisor, Truman Lodge, who's like this totally, tastes of white guy. Feels like he's just got out of some Ivy League school, who's working for Sanchez, and he's actually really concerned about the money. And he's telling them how much. And the idea is that the Joe Butcher is like doing a cover for them to launder the money, but he actually can give them a lot of money as well, turn them a lot bigger profits on top of that. So they tell them how much money they need to launder, how much they need to raise for it, and they radio the number to the guys filming Joe Butcher's segments, and they write the number on a cue card, and it's for this night it's $22,000. So Joe's like, "All right, I need all of you out there. $22,000 needs to be arranged from each of our different venues. Please find the kindness in your hearts to pick up the phone and call us and donate. You can help change a life," or whatever the line is. It's so funny. So as this scam is going on, the president of the country, this fictional country of Isthmus, comes in, played by Pedro Armendariz Jr., which is pretty cool. And he walks in and he comes to Sanchez. He's like, this month's money, it was only half the usual amount. And Sanchez is like, "Well, you were pretty quiet when I got arrested." But he surprisingly cuts him the check anyway, even though it seemed pretty clear to me that Sanchez is the one in charge down here. And it's like, I imagine that Sanchez is really the guy who probably is behind the power in this country, and therefore he shouldn't have to give him the extra money, especially since the president, is insolent enough to come in here and bitch about that to him, because Sanchez is right. He didn't do anything to try and help him. That was all Milton Crest giving him out of trouble. So he cuts him the money anyway, which I thought was a little bit surprising.
I didn't get that from that. I thought that he came in and said, "This is half the usual amount," and then he says, "You were really quiet," and then the El Presidente just takes the check back and goes. I didn't think that he gave him any more.
Oh, I thought he wrote down more. Maybe not.
I'm not sure. I'd have to rewatch it again for the 8th, 9th, 10th time.
Yeah. So, and then we have some special guests show up, the new customers. And amongst those customers...
Oh, we're not allowed to say the words.
What?
The Asian investor, they like Truman Lodge does say in the thing, it's like, "But what about the Orientals?" He does say Orientals.
Yeah, well, they're from the Far East, and they're investors who come in, and with them is the same mysterious man from the casino who was following Bond. And basically, Sanchez wants them to invest $100 million to buy his cocaine. And they're like, that's a lot of money. We don't know if we really want to buy all this unless you can really show us something with meat to it. And Truman Lodge is really worried about this. We can't really show him anything. But Sanchez is like, "Oh, no, I understand. It's no problem. We'll take you out to see the facility tomorrow." And Truman's like, Truman's like, "Don't worry. We won't show him the entire operation." So they're kind of, their fears have been kind of assuaged, and they're like, okay, well, you'll pay the money type of thing. And he shows them out. And then Sanchez sitting behind a desk, and all the while that this is going on, Bond is secretly outside the window, laying down the Dentonite toothpaste and unspooling the cigarettes to lay out these plastic explosives and blow the place to smithereens. He then, after laying the plastic explosives, sneaks back down the side of the pipe of the building, goes across the street to this other derelict building, gets up to sniper level. He gets that laser pointer gun and waits for the right time. He clicks, and right before he's about to hit it, he sees that Pam is in there in the next room talking to Colonel Heller. And she gives him this piece of paper, and he's looking at it. He kind of looks at it, and he goes over and he's showing her. And Bond notices that he's being kind of cordial with her, and she's being cordial with him. And so he gets suspicious, like something's going on. So rather than wait for her to really leave, he's like, fuck this. So he just hits the detonator. Big explosion goes off. Sanchez tries to hit the deck, and Bond aims the thing. He's about to shoot him, and then he gets ambushed by these guys who are like in like these ninja outfits. And
ninjas!
They're fighting him, and the guy picks up the gun and tries to shoot him, but because it's coated to Bond's fingerprints, it doesn't work. Tosses it aside, and this is the part I was mentioning in terms of the fight that I thought was a little weird. He throws a fishnet on Bond, and they hit him like once with a pipe, and he's down and out for the count. I didn't buy that. I thought it was going to be the beginning of a bit of a longer fight, but he gets taken out pretty easily. So then they take him and throw him back in this car, and they drive out to this little hut out in the woods, or out in the jungle, I should say. And they strap him down to this table, and we find out that this mysterious guy who's been following him, and it was at the meeting, is actually with Hong Kong Narcotics. He's like, you son of a bitch, we've been tracking this guy for years, and we just got him. We're trying to get into the head of his operations. He just invited us in here. They blew up the whole thing. And with them is a guy from MI6. And he's like, oh, I know. He's like, who? And he's like, who would have this kind of gun anyway that coated a fingerprint? And the guy's like, oh, James Bond. He's MI6. He's like, you put him up to this? I'm like, no, he's gone rogue. Sorry, Bond. I'm bringing you back to London. It's my job to bring you in. And he has this like syringe, and he's going to sedate him. And before he can, Colonel Heller shows up. And true to his name, he shows up with a tank. And kaboom, fires and starts blasting this hut to smithereens. And the Hong Kong Narcotics guy runs out of the back and realizes they're not going to escape because Heller has his guys surrounding the place. He's like, don't let them take you alive. And so they start blasting the place and shooting. And the Heller's guys come in and quickly start taking control of the situation. Colonel Heller himself shoots the woman who is, the right hand woman of the narcotics guy. And the narcotics guy played, I can't remember his name, I can't remember. He's been in a lot of movies. He's really cool though.
Yeah, but he was not Liu Kang. Who's the bad guy in Mortal Kombat?
I can't remember.
He's that guy. That guy.
And so Sanchez actually shows up here personally too. Finds the guy in here and he grabs it. He's like, what the hell are you doing here? What's this all about? But then he bites a cyanide capsule rather than talk. And that really pisses off Sanchez so much that as he starts walking away, he turns around and pulls out a pistol. He's like, just shoots the guy several times. Like, oh man, this guy's got some rage issues. But then they go around the corner and they see the Bond is all tied up and stuff. And they're like, oh shit. So they take him, and the next morning Bond wakes up and he's at this beautiful estate, which it gives me kind of Moonraker vibes with the way that it's got like the waterfalls and the natural rock formations and all that, kind of like at the Aztec complex type of thing. And Bond wakes up there and he's kind of, what's going on? And he walks around and Sanchez is there to greet him. And he's like, you all right? You really helped me out of that last night. Well, who are those guys? And Bond's quick on his feet and he lies. He's like, oh, they're assassins. Paid hitmen to come after you. And he's like, well, what were they doing with you? He's like, oh, they must have spotted me in the casino, recognized me. He's like, oh, you know them? And he's like, yeah, I used to work for the British government. And Sanchez kind of laughs like, I knew it. You have manners. And it's like, you're well mannered for this. And he's like, well, why do you know that? He's like, well, we used to keep tabs of these types of people. He's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, well, you'd say, like, did they tell you who put him up to this? And Bond's like, no, but they said it's somebody who's going to be coming into Isthmus tonight on a boat. And Sanchez pretends to be cordial, like, oh, okay, thank you. And he turns to leave, and he just gets really angry. And then Colonel Heller walks around the corner. He's like, man, you ain't going to believe who this guy is. And Sanchez is like, yeah, he's a British cigar. How'd you know that? He's like, oh, yeah, I told the kind of thing. So he bids goodbye to Bond and Lupe, and Lupe's going to show him around, and he puts him in the hover up top. And Sanchez is like, okay, tonight we're going to have to talk to Milton. Bring Lupe with us because he won't lie in front of her. And he's like, okay, that's it. Carry her to Chicago. He's a great. I had the opportunity to meet him once for a con, and I missed out just a few months ago. It's too bad. Yes.
Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. So he's like, yeah, so make sure that what's going on. And Lupe takes Bond to the side room. He's like, what the hell are you doing here? You could get yourself killed. What? You got to get out of here. This is too dangerous for everything. And Bond's like, I don't really want to know anything about this. I'll find out later. And she's like, look, I can't. He's like, no, you're going to get me out of here. We're going to talk about that. You're going to keep your mouth shut. You're not going to say anything. And so she decides to pull this little scam where she goes downstairs and there's a guard watching and she drops her purse. She's like, oh. And he goes down to try and pick it up for her. Bond escapes down to the dock. And then she eats her purse back and she's just walking down and the guard's like, oh shit. And he runs down there and he sees that she's in the motorboat. She's like, bye, I'm going to go shopping. It's like, no, but Mr. Sanchez, he says you have to stay here. Bye. And she takes off. He's like, and he looks all worried because there's nothing he can really do. Because obviously you can't like shoot her or anything. And as she's taking off across the harbor and the boat, we see the Bond is hanging on down below or on the side of the boat. And she takes him back so Bond can go back to the hotel where Q and Pam are waiting. And Bond comes inside. He's really angry. He grabs Pam, pulls her into the back room, and throws her down in the bed. Puts a gun on her. He's like really pissed off. He's like, I know you're in on this. What the hell's going on? I saw you there with Heller, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, shut up. This thing is bigger than your little personal vendetta, Bond. Sanchez bought four
Stinger missiles.
Yes, he bought 4 Stinger missiles from the Contras, threatening to shoot down American airliners unless the DAA, cut back and didn't pursue the charges. And so Felix made a deal. He handed me the letter at the wedding. We could buy the missiles back in terms of being hands off on them. This is bigger than you and your little revenge mission. And then Bond is kind of shocked because now this is twice now in the space of less than 24 hours that he's kind of been causing problems for people who are really trying to, take down Sanchez for a variety of reasons. And so Bond is kind of feeling a bit flustered, doesn't really know what to do. So he goes outside and he's like, I'm going back. You people stay out of it. It's like, oh, like hell we are. It's like, stay out of it. I'm getting out of here. So Bond leaves. And of course, Pam and Q aren't going to listen to Bond about this. So Bond makes his way back to the estate and he's sleeping there. And he's going to go make his way back to the estate. But first, he wants to find out about the Wavecrest investigation. And so Bond and Pam team up and they take this little boat, the pilot boat that's supposed to guide the Wavecrest into the harbor. And then it starts being a little faster, and he drives her out to the Wavecrest, and she jumps on board and greets the captain, and she's going to be the pilot taking the thing in, and he starts complaining, "You're going in too fast." And she's like, "Oh, really?" And then she pushes it all full throttle to really piss him off. He's like, "Oh, shit." So he tries to get control of the boat, which serves as cover as Bond sneaks on board into the lower dock where the mini subs are docking. Bond's kind of hiding there, floating in the water. And sure enough, Sanchez is there. He boards the boat, and he's going to talk to Milton. He's like, "You've had a lot of problems here recently, Milton." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, the harbor master, what can I say? They had a crazy pilot. He was driving the boat in too fast." He's like, "I'm talking about the money you owe me." Milton's like, "Oh, maybe we should talk about this inside." So they go in, and Sanchez is, he's kind of upset. Talking, "Well, why don't you tell me what happened?" And Milton's telling him this crazy story about when Bond showed up and, attacked the Wavecrest and stole the plane with all the money. And Bond's like, Sanchez is like, "Telling me this guy started water skiing behind the plane and took the plane with all of my money?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's what happened." And Lupe, even though she's there, it's just like, "Yeah, Lupe, she must have heard something." And she kind of, interestingly enough, she doesn't refute what he's saying, but she doesn't really confirm it either. And Sanchez's guards who are searching around they're trying to find, any other signs on the boat. And Bond, meanwhile, has brought all the money with him from the bank, which was something that upset the bank manager when he took all the money out of the account. And Bond just threw all the money into the pressurized container, just dumped it in there, and is hiding back down below. And of course, Sanchez's guards find this, and they go back, and the guy whispers to Sanchez, "Hey, man." And Sanchez's like, "Come on." He's like, "Come here, Milton." So they go walking, and they go down to the basement, and he looks inside the money, and Sanchez looks like, "What's this?" And Milton looks at that, and he's like, he's genuinely flustered. He's like, "It's not my money." He's like, "You're right. It's not. You want it so much you can have it." And he throws him inside the pressurized tank, slams the door shut, starts turning up the pressure. You hear the high-pitched tune there. He does. Yeah, it's really funny. And it's Anthony Zerbe screaming as the pitch is rising and rising, and then Sanchez gets an axe. And Bond is actually watching, is kind of disturbed by this as well, because he's not really used to the type of violence that in the the whole drug world. And so
James Bond has never been in a PG-13 movie before.
So Sanchez takes an axe and he cuts the pressurized pipe to it, and that just kills the pressure ex nihilo. And Milton Crest's head inflates like a balloon and it explodes. and there's just blood everywhere. And Sanchez is just kind of upset about it. He turns the dials down and he walks out of the room to leave.
Patron, what do we do about the money? And Sanchez says, take it, cat.
Laundered it.
So just Bond, so awesome. This movie is amazing.
So Bond makes a quick escape, makes it back to the estate. And then we cut to the next morning, and Sanchez immediately goes to see him, and Bond's under the covers, and he's pretending to have been asleep for a long time. And he's like, oh, man, you helped me out. Come and see me. So Bond gets up, he gets dressed, he says, man, you saved me a lot of money. And he's like, wait, what are you talking about? Because Bond's pretending he just got up. He's like, oh, yeah, that information you gave me really paid off. Got the insider. You're right. There was one. It's like, oh, thank you, Bond. We're going on a trip later this afternoon. Why don't you tag along? The car will be here to pick you up at like 3 o'clock or whatever. Bond's like, oh, okay. So they take off in the cars. Or Bond is the one who gets to take off in the car with a convoy with Truman Lodge and those guys. And Q is outside the front of the building because Pam wanted him to watch to see when Bond was going to be leaving. And Q is wearing like a sombrero and a really fake-looking black mustache with a raking the leaves out front. And once the cars go by, he pulls the handle of the rake, which has an antenna pops out in the radio, and he's like, they've just left. And he just tosses the rake into the bushes. Sanchez, meanwhile, goes to his helipad to meet a helicopter. Dario is there, and he's got the Stinger missiles. And Sanchez is like, yeah, my man. He gives him a hug. So he's really tight with Dario. So they take off to head up into the mountains. And Pam, meanwhile, goes to the airport to get a plane. But she finds that her plane is being torn apart. And they're like, sorry, ma'am. This is Sanchez's order. She's like, but I need a plane. It's like, oh, you're not going to be able to rent any planes. So she looks around and sees a couple. And it's implied that she steals one, even though we don't actually get to see her do it. So the convoy, meanwhile, arrives at this religious estate, this ancient place that they've rebuilt. And it's out in the middle of nowhere. And it's where Joe Butcher is. And Truman Lodge is explaining to the investors who are here in the car because they've been brought here to see the operations because they need the money, or because Truman and Sanchez need the investment money. And Truman's like, yeah, Joe Butcher, this whole place started as just a cover to help us launder the money, but then it turns out that Joe can actually turn a pretty hefty profit for us. So we rebuilt the whole place from scratch out of the original stone, so it looks all nice and blah blah. And they drive up in there and they go inside the laboratories immediately in this side room, and they're gonna soon take them on a tour. Pam, meanwhile, flies by in a plane and lands in a nearby field. And she comes up to the guard at the front gate and she's like, oh, I need to see Mr. Joe. I have a donation. He's like, we can't take people off the street. She's like, oh, but I have all this money. He's like, God told me to come and give it to him personally. And he's like, okay. So he makes the arrangement and brings her up. And Joe's there to greet her, and she's brought up in the golf cart. And I like how casually she's like, oh, he's like, oh, may I? And she's like, oh, certainly. She gives him the bag, and he, without even looking, he just hands the bag over to his assistant. And he's like, and she's like, oh, is there any way that I could possibly study? This is such a beautiful place. He's like, oh, would you like to study here? She's like, oh, could I? She's like, sure, right this way. And he takes her into this side room, and he's basically thinks he's gonna sleep with her and get it on and try and exploit her fangirling out on him. But of course, no sooner than she gets him in this room, she pulls a pistol on him, and he's just totally impressed.
Well, hang on a second. He takes her in because it's his personal private sanctum for reflection. And don't worry, the entire room has been soundproof. No one will disturb us. And Wayne Newton is being so rapey. He is being creepy and lascivious. Yeah. And so it is kind of a just desserts situation when Pam is like, oh, I know how to thank you. And then she pulls up her garter gun again. And he is impressed. He is impressed. And I do enjoy every time he gets a rolled up newspaper across the face. He's just like, bless your heart.
And she even fires the gun at one of the portrait things on the wall. And he's like, oh my God. And she goes to leave to lock him, to shove him in his room. And he's like, oh, bless your heart. So meanwhile, Bond is with the investors on their tour. They're being taken inside, and they're going to go up to the laboratories. And they're basically being told that what happens is that they dissolve the cocaine in this chemical function, mix it in with the gasoline and load it on these fuel trucks, and that the cocaine is odorless, so it's safe for customs to check it, and that the scientists will show you how to reconvert it back into cocaine. And one of the investors asks, well, how does he do that? And Sanchez walks around the corner like, we can't tell you all our trade secrets. But he's like, oh, but once you get the cocaine back, you can keep the gasoline as a bonus. They find that kind of exciting. And they're all wearing masks at the time because Truman Lodge makes this joke about, sorry, we don't want our customers to be addicted to our own, addicted to, the whole don't get high on your own supply thing, which would have been a better line, especially coming from some little dirtbag like Truman. That's who feels like he would make a good 80s high school movie villain. It's because he's that jock type guy. And so they go upstairs and Dario's here. But they're all wearing their N95 masks. And Dario kind of sighs Bond as he walks by and he turns to Sanchez. He's like, who's the new guy? And he's like, Sanchez's like, don't worry, I kind of like him. So they go into the next room, and that's when they're further explaining all the chemical stuff I just talked about. And Dario's still kind of watching. They're like, oh, you can take your masks off now, gentlemen. And everybody but Bond takes off their masks at first. But then realizing people are kind of looking at him funny, he finally takes off his mask. Sanchez is up front kind of, greasing the palms of the investors, talking about how wealthy this is. And then Dario sneaks up behind Bond and pulls a gun on him, and Sanchez sees this. And Sanchez, he goes from a smile to uh-oh. But he tries to play it cool. And it's like, oh, okay. So and they're finishing doing the demonstration, and Bond realizes he has to do something fast. So he knocks the chemistry set over, because it's kerosene, and it catches fire. The investors scream, and Truman Lodge ushers them out of the room. The people are running, trying to evacuate. And Truman's like, we can't go. And Colonel Heller's like, I can't put out the fire, but we might get stuff out of here. And Sanchez's like, get the fucking trucks out of here. Get the trucks out. They already got all the coke mixed in there. We're fine. And where are the stingers? And Heller's like, I got them inside helicopters. He's like, good, go secure those. Make sure that nobody else has them. Just get the hell out of here. And Truman gets all upset about this. He's like, but this facility, it costs $32 million. He's like, there's $500 million in the case. We got even more worth of cocaine in the trucks, and we got the fucking stingers. Get the fuck out of here. So he sings him on his way, and then he finally turns his attention to Bond. And Dario's like, I know this guy. He's an informer. And Sanchez takes this really personally. He's pissed off. He's like, well, who sent you? What's this all about? And Bond don't say nothing. So Dario gets this twine, the clear plastic
zip tie kind of thing.
Oh, the zip tie. He zip ties his ankles and they throw him on the conveyor belt. And he's like, you better start. And Sanchez gets really angry at him because he takes this really personally. But Bond, rather than fessing up to having framed Milton, he's like, well, your troubles are a lot worse than just me, Sanchez. You can't trust Milton Crest. Who can you trust? You can't trust Heller? You left him alone with the stingers. And for some reason, Sanchez kind of buys into this as like a potential problem. He's like, what are you going to trust? You going to trust Truman Lodge with your money? And they're singing it down. And it's precisely because he mentioned the singers. He has Dario stop the conveyor belt for a minute. But because Bond doesn't seem to know much else about it, they turn the conveyor back on. And Sanchez decides to leave. And they go downstairs to be ushered out the back. But Dario decides he wants to stay there because Bond, having fallen off the conveyor, used the zip ties for his wrist to grab onto the side of the conveyor on this like little side metal hook or whatever. And Dario, being sadist, decides rather than just leaving there to burn to death or whatever, he decides he can't have this. So he jumps over the ledge, puts his feet on either sides of the conveyor, so he's not actually on the belt. And he gets out his knife and he starts slowly cutting it. Cuts one wire, about to cut another. Pam Bouvier runs inside as everybody's fleeing, and the back door is sealed, which Sanchez went outside of, and then the front door gets sealed as well. So it seems like they're trapped inside. So she runs up the stairs, and she sees Dario, and he just kind of smiles on her, and he's like, you're dead. And she's like, oh, you took the words right out of my mouth. And she pulls the pistol and shoots him twice, but then she's out of bullets. And he kind of laughs, and then Bond reaches forward, because thanks to Dario cutting some of his wrists loose, reaches his arm forward and grabs onto Dario's right leg, and just yanks at him hard. And Dario falls off the conveyor belt and grabs onto Bond, holding on desperately, and starts screaming as his feet get inside. And it's pretty bloody, actually, as you see him as his feet get mashed in by the claw masher that breaks down the cocaine bricks. And he starts slipping and sliding as he can't hang on, and he just gets diced into millions of pieces, screaming in this really gory scene. And Pam sits there like an idiot and just like, oh, what are you doing hanging around? He's like, turn the bloody machine off. And so she finally goes to do that. Whereas Sanchez, meanwhile, goes to find Heller, and he's like, oh, I'm just checking to see if the missile's all right. And Sanchez just kind of nods, but he's worried. And so then Bond and Pam run down the stairs, and they can't get out the front or the back. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get out of here. And all of a sudden, a forklift comes crashing through the wall with Colonel Heller impaled on it, because Sanchez was gullible enough to take Bond's lie. And so they're like, oh, cool. So they found another way out. The trucks, meanwhile, as we see, the tanker trucks are taking off down the road. Truman Lodge gets in the car with Sanchez. We're not really sure what happened to the investors. They just kind of fled. And then all the people from the laundering center, all the fake religious people are running for their lives. And Bond and Pam just steal a golf cart and they're driving out towards the exit. And she comes upon Joe Butcher, who's running along with her suitcase or her purse that was loaded with all the cash. And she swipes it from him as they're going by. And he's like, "Oh, bless your heart," as the bowling facility behind them is being blown to smithereens.
I love that.
So they drive the golf cart back into the field where the plane is. They take off on the airplane, and they go after the convoy.
Mm-hmm.
And
of tanker trucks, of gasoline tanker trucks loaded with gasoline and cocaine.
Yes, and they take off on these, and Pam flies down close enough to one of them so Bond can jump off and get onto the back of the truck. And he starts crawling along, and she starts flying along the side, and the trucks go up into this mountainous region, which they filmed on this place called El Diablo Road, which is one of the most dangerous roads in Mexico, apparently. And this is where the climax gets to be a little bit Mad Max, where Bond's crawling along on top and trying to get into the first truck, and he having a hard time, and Sanchez is yelling to each of the truckers that we're going to meet somewhere else, a rendezvous, and he tells the guy to hang. So Bond ends up getting in truck to the first truck and knocks the guy trying to get in control of the car, and he can't, so he jumps onto the next truck because they're trying to ram him alongside. He knocks the driver out of the driver's seat. He gets a hold of the truck, and he starts ramming the other one, and they start trying to ram each other off the mountain. And the guy in front of him is even swerving to block Bond's ability to pull around him. So Bond ends up getting alongside and rams this guy hard into the wall that completely rips off the front drivetrain of the tires. So he's done. He keeps driving this truck down the hill, and they get to this little break in the mountains. This is where they do one of those things where the geography completely changes, where we go from being in this mountainous road to being in this flat little valley area where Sanchez parks the car and he gets out and he gets the stingers, and Truman Lodge is even getting kind of like shocked by this as he gives one of the stinger missiles to be loaded into the bazooka, and the guy aims it as Truman and him take off back in the car, and he aims with the bazooka and he fires at the truck that Bond's driving, and there happens to be this big pile of like dirt or rock that's kind of off the side of the road because it was like under construction or whatever. So Bond swerves over to hit it to roll the truck over on its side. The Stinger missile zooms past underneath it, and even though you can clearly see this flat valley and farmland behind them, it miraculously ends up back up in the mountains and hits the first truck and blows it to smithereens. But they make sure to show that the driver got out, which is good.
Yes, which is nice.
Yes. So Bond keeps, and then even though Bond is driving on the side and the truck should have tipped over, it keeps driving on its side just long enough for it to come down on top of the little truck that these guys were left with. So he keeps driving, and they start shooting, and they blow out his rear tires. So now he's dragging this tanker along, and they end up back in the mountainous region again. And he swerves the car kind of to a stop as it gets caught, or the trailer gets caught at the edge of a cliff. And these four guys are running. They're shooting at him like crazy. And Pam flies her airplane in and decides to, she dumps like a bunch of dust because the plane has like some type of duster on it. She drops all this dust to distract him for a bit to buy Bond some time as they'll get kind of run over. And Bond sees that the convoy is further down on one of the lower roads, so he unhitches the trailer from the rest of the truck, sending the tanker trailer down the hill. And Sanchez is riding along in the car with Truman, and he looks up and he sees this thing, and it just comes down and impales the next truck and blows it to smithereens. And they pull over, and Truman gets out and just has a conniption. He's like, "Oh, isn't that just great, isn't it? There goes another $80 million on top of the $32 million. We're just going to have that be another tax write-off, aren't we?" And Truman's like, he's like, "Yeah, you're right, Truman." Sanchez is like, "You're right, Truman. Time to start cutting the overhead." And he kills him with a machine gun.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and so Sanchez then decides to get into the next car. They start taking off. Bond drives the heads outside of the truck to try and catch up. And she ends up in the airplane. So they catch up to this. I think we're on the last tanker truck now.
Yep.
And Bond ends up getting dropped onto the back of the plane. He drives up with the truck actually racing up to get up there, and the truck kind of ends up crashing into the dirt, and Pam sees this, crash lands the plane because it was already getting shot at with another Stinger missile because Sanchez is just insane at this point. She crash lands the plane safely and goes to steal the other truck, which is just the truck. It doesn't have the trailer on it anymore. So Bond is now on the tanker as they're driving, and Sanchez gets out of the side of the seat, and he's got his machete on him. and he swings the machete and cuts the brake line, which is certainly an accident. And so now the trucker can't stop the cars are moving through these mountainous embankments. Decides, screw this, and he just opens the door and jumps out of the truck. And Sanchez and Bond keep trying to fight each other on the back of the truck. And so then the truck ends up going off this hillside and it rolls. And it tumbles. It takes a pretty hard tumble, which probably should have killed them both, but they live. And Sanchez is lying there.
They both look beat up as hell.
They do. Sanchez is just covered in the gasoline, kind of beat up, sitting right next to this really big rock. I'm like, look, he hitting his head on that. So he gets up and he starts heading over to Bond. And he's like, you could have had it all. And Bond's like, wait, don't you want to know why? And he pulls out a lighter because, of course,
the gift that was given to him at the wedding of Felix and Della.
Yes, it's inscribed with Felix and Della from James because, of course, you're going to give Felix Leiter a lighter, presumably made of silver. And you barely get a reaction from Sanchez before he's caught on fire. Screams.
Oh, no,
no, you don't. I'll get to that later.
All right.
He screams bloody murder, which lasts about 2 seconds. He's dead. Big explosion.
Yep.
Big explosion where supposedly this giant flaming hand reached out of the explosion that they caught on one of the still photographs, which is kind of funny. And then Bond is like, he's all relieved and exhausted and beat the shit. And Pam suddenly drives up in the other truck around the corner like it's no big deal and says, like, hey, need a ride kind of thing. So Bond gets in the truck to leave, and then we cut back to Sanchez's estate where there's this huge party going on. I don't know who all these people are exactly. Maybe Lupe invited them there. I don't know. So they're having this big party, and
the president of Isthmus is there.
Yeah, the president's there, but I'm not sure if he's happy that Sanchez is dead. Maybe, I guess, because he doesn't have to answer to Sanchez anymore. I guess that's what it is. So Pam is standing talking to Q, and Lupe is so excited, and she throws her arms around Bond. And that's the moment I forgot to mention as well, when Lupe did go to the hotel to talk to Q and Pam about how Bond didn't leave the country, and even Q rolled his eyes because Pam was getting upset. Like, I'm not going to help James. Loves that guy. Again, this really catty, cheesy 80s bit. And we continue that bit where Bond and Lupe embrace and they start kissing. And then Pam's just like, oh, she storms off and she starts crying. And then Bond feels that he's done something wrong. So he shows Lupe over to the president walks up and he shows them to each other. And he's like, I think you'll make a lovely couple. And then he leaps off the balcony into one of the lower pools. And he splashes in and he pushes up and Pam is there. And she's like, oh, so surprised. She's like, well, aren't you going to ask me first? So he reaches out his hand, he grabs her, and he pulls her in the water to make out. And Q is standing up on the upper balcony and looking down and sees that he's all right. And kind of just like this. At one point, he even told Pam that, oh, don't worry. Sometimes when you're employed in this type of work, you have to use all the tools at your disposal to get out. And so they embrace in the water, and it's in the end.
A romantic finale.
Yeah.
With a winking fish and the and the delicious strains of.
Oh, and that's another thing. Bond took the diamond necklace from the iguana and gave it to Lupe.
I don't know how that happened because I didn't know that. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, and then we have "If You Ask Me To" later by Patti LaBelle, later made famous by Celine Dion. And then during the closing credits, which, you know what? And I noticed this during The Living Daylights as well. It's still like, it's not a freeze frame, but it's almost like License to Kill. It could be a John Glenn flourish over the closing credits, but you're still seeing the image and there's still movement and everything like that. There is a Surgeon General's warning for smoking is bad for you. And then it does say, what it always does, James Bond will return.
But no title this time because they didn't know what he would return in. And that's License to Kill.
Yep.
I'm on the fence on this one. So
I think you know what I want to give it.
When you're making a revenge movie, there's 3 things you need to do in every revenge movie. 1, you have to feel. I forgot to mention that as well. Bond at the party called to Felix at the end of the movie. And Felix is in the hospital recovering.
Happy as a clam. Yeah.
Happy as a clam. And there's this hot nurse, and he's kind of is implied that he might be hitting on her. He doesn't care about his dead wife. And it's like, okay, they earned number 1. The first number 1 thing you have to do in every revenge movie is you have to feel the slight. And they did a good job of that at the beginning of the movie. Because you feel that for Felix. but they kind of undo that a bit at the end with Felix being like, "Oh, James, oh, lovely." Okay, the second thing every revenge movie has to do is when the villain finds out why the hero has been chasing them and what this is all about, and that this ties back to being ultimately a revenge mission.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing the movie has to do, which is in tandem with number 2, is that when you kill the villain, precisely because of number 2, it has a hell of a lot of satisfaction to it. When you finally beat the guy who beat you. This movie got the first one, it did not get the second 2, because
I disagree.
when Bond tells when Bond tells Sanchez, "Don't you want to know why?" he pulls out the lighter, and there is barely a quarter of a second reaction before you don't even see Bond throw the lighter at him. It's like he barely gets a reaction, and he's already on fire. And it's like 2 seconds later, he collapses, and you have the big explosion, and it's like over like that.
Well, and in terms of the believability of that particular moment, I agree with you that him doing this, like having the lighter and then lighting it, and like no one from 5 feet away is going to see the inscription on the lighter. Bond didn't even see the inscription on the lighter. However, for the purposes of movie, I will sort of let that slide. In reaction to him throwing the lighter, they do establish when the lighter is gifted to James at the beginning of the movie by Della and Felix, is that he lights it once and it has like it is overfilled or it's too powerful. So it was like, it's basically a flamethrower lighter, which is a conceit of the gift that was established at the beginning of the film.
Yes. But again, you don't get to savor it because he doesn't really. There's no hint that he even recognizes what this even is. Like he looks at it, you see that he's still looking at it when he catches fire. So it's like, did he really read it? Did he get it? I don't know. And
I think for purposes of movie, yes, he did. He looks at it, he sees it, he goes. Because he does react. He does react. I don't know if he's reacting to the inscription or to, "Oh, you've got a lighter and I'm covered in gasoline."
Yeah, that's it. And it's like, that's the thing that revenge movies you need. You want to feel this. You want to feel that when the villain really gets it. And when he finds out what it is and he's like, "Oh, shit, I've been had." And I just don't feel this movie really has that.
Well, in between the characters, I agree with you, but in terms of the audience being aware of the comeuppance, I think it is a conceit of the film, and it's one that I'm willing to forgive.
So, next thing is, as we mentioned, the 80s love triangle cheese. That didn't need to be there. And the thing about Pam Bouvier, it's not that I don't like her accomplishments, she's just a boring character. Like Holly Goodhead. It's like, I just find them both to be kind of bland and boring. It's like, this character should be a lot more exciting given who she is and what she's done, and for some reason she's just not. She just feels like the token. She shows up about halfway, a little less than halfway through the film, but she's just kind of, I feel they could have cast almost anybody in this role.
I disagree. You know, I have a couple of seasons of Law and Order that I watched just because Pam Bouvier was in it. I thought that she was capable. I thought that she had agency. I thought that she was proactive throughout the film. I thought that she had a strong character, and she proved herself along the way. Like, she's up there with Triple X.
Well, I didn't say she didn't do those things. I just don't like the character. Or the actress playing the character, I just feel is a bit boring.
I thought that, you know, for lack of a better term.
Like, I thought that Triple X and Bond have a much more sassy kind of back and forth tryst throughout the movie, which I kind of liked. Whereas here, I just feel she's kind of just.
But I felt the chemistry between Carrie Lowell and Timothy Dalton was better than with Miriam Dabo and Dalton in. Yeah, like in terms.
She's just boring.
Well, I don't find Pam Bouvier to be boring at all. I can, like, when it comes to Lupe, I totally get what you're saying in terms of her being sort of like, she's the damsel in distress. But
she even mentions at one point when Bond offers to get her out, she's like, "Why would I want to get out? I spent years trying to get away from home." And I don't know if that's supposed to mean that where she came from is a lot worse than having to put up with Sanchez. because she didn't seem upset that Bond killed Sanchez. She seemed happy, like really happy. So, I mean,
the relationship between Lupe and Sanchez, though, is also an abusive situation, and like,
which is why I was surprised that she said, "Oh, I won't want to go back. I worked so far to get here," and I'm like, that could be seen as either really sad because you came from an even darker place, or it can be seen as just really sad that you would rather. Is it because you like the glitz and glamour, even though this guy's an abusive jerk? I mean, I wasn't.
But also, she's willing to put other dudes in danger by going and having her own, tender moments, and then all of a sudden, the guy's,
That's the thing, because when she does that, it's like, okay, so clearly she doesn't love Sanchez. She doesn't seem to enjoy being with him. She seems to want to get away from him, and yet when Bond offers that, she keeps kind of rejecting him at each turn. And so when she runs to the hotel and says that she's in love with James, I felt that was a little out of left field because he had offered plenty of times, like, you shouldn't be here, you should get out here. She's like, oh no, I can't, I don't want to. So that was a little weird. And I feel she did help out a little bit. Maybe she could have done a little more. I don't know.
I'm paying far more attention to Pam than I am to Lupe, so maybe I'll have to go back and check that out and see that dynamic. I think the movie
needed more Dario, because Dario is just awesome. He was amazing henchman, because he's just so sadistic and just a delight to see on. It steals every second that he's on screen, because it's, of course, Benicio del Toro. Of course, he's going to do that. And I love the Joe Butcher character. That was really funny how they're working that into it, because they may not launder money for drugs, but they're kind of bad people. And I mean, in real life, I mean, the type of people they style them on.
Yeah, like televangelist kind of thing. Yeah. The shady televangelist. I don't know if there are any other kinds.
Yeah, and the ending, the climax does feel a bit more Mad Max than James Bond to me. A little bit. Like, even some of the stunts with the trucks, like when it does the Papa Wheelie thing, and it tips on its side. I'm like, you don't even see that stuff in Mad Max movies. And that was a little bit weird to see it here. And I mean, some of the stuff is really cool that they do with it, but again, it felt a bit too Mad Max under James Bond. I do like the first half of the movie a lot, though. Like the first half of the movie was really engaging, and I'm in it. And then it's once he goes undercover and goes to Isthmus and does the whole thing in the casino with the Hong Kong narcotics. That's where the movie kind of slows down a little bit. And I feel that, when the Singer missile thing came into it, I'm like, okay, they're trying to raise the stakes a little bit, which helps. But then at that moment, I almost thought that if he had called M and told him what was going on, that it's like, hey, the CIA is kind of in on this. Maybe I should be on this too. But he doesn't, because admittedly, M probably wouldn't care. And Q showing up, I thought was kind of funny, because Q and Bond have always had that kind of cantankerous uncle and mischievous nephew type relationship. So the fact that he either snuck this stuff out of Q Branch, or he secretly made it himself at his house to bring down to Isthmus was kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, and I did appreciate the relationship between Q and Bond in this, and the always being frustrated with Bond's cavalier nature with the equipment. I liked how it was like, well, you would have been dead long ago if it hadn't been for us.
One of the best lines, especially in his tribute video.
Yeah.
And I do like that Q gets to enjoy the party at the end of the movie. It's usually a character you don't think you're going to see at the end of a Bond movie, or at least that Q.
Well, and I forget, is he at the party as well?
No.
Okay, I thought for some reason.
No, but when Bond talks to Felix, Felix mentions, hey, I think you might want to talk to M. There's probably a job available for you, after this. And, of course, Felix trying to just, like, do you remember there was a lady called Della? Maybe not. I did like Sharky. I liked him a lot. Yeah. And even though he didn't help out very much, I liked the other FBI guy that was with him, played by Grant Bush. He was cool.
The late 80s actors that are in here are amazing. Like, I think like Anthony Zerbe, Everett McGill, you got both Johnsons from Die Hard, because one of the DEA agents is Special Agent Johnson, and then Robert Davi is Special Agent Johnson. And, like, I'm sorry, the name escaped me. And, like, just everyone who shows up. Like, even I forget, Truman Lodge must have been in like a Revenge of the Nerds movie, I think.
Anthony Starkey, or Stark or whatever.
Anthony Stark, if that's his real name.
What was it?
Wow.
No, he had a E at the end of it. So it might be Starkey. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Let me see what the guy's name is again. Since I have it right here. It says his name, Anthony Stark with an E at the end of it.
Okay.
He's not on. Yeah, he's known for an episode on Seinfeld and known for a character on the George Carlin show.
I don't recall the George Carlin show.
I don't know.
He always triggered something about that sort of.
Oh, he's barely been in anything. Okay, I see. But,
okay.
So
he was in License to Kill, which is pretty bitchin'.
Yeah, and Return of the Killer Tomatoes. But
with George Clooney.
So I enjoy it, but it feels more Miami Vice to me than it does James Bond.
And I understand that because it is sort of soaked in late 80s drugs are bad tropes. But there is something about James Bond doing James Bond things of his own volition with no regard to, like, it is a revenge movie. I think it succeeds even in the places where you say it fails. I'm fine with it. But I like seeing James Bond do James Bond things. And I think this is one of the best representations of what Bond can do when his back is up against the wall. And as soon as he runs away from Hemingway House, that is like his back is up against the wall the entire time. In fact, when he kills one of the guys on the wave crest after Sharky is killed, there is apparently a cut where he's like, this is for Sharky. And he shoots the guy with the harpoon. And apparently there was a cut where they cut earlier where Bond laughs maniacally. Like, this is unhinged James Bond sort of territory. I love it.
Timothy Dalton laughing maniacally as Bond. I
don't know. You'd have to kind of watch Hot Fuzz.
Craig doing that because he didn't do that either.
But like, I think that this is just one of those, and it's a bit of a wish fulfillment because he has no one to answer to. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He's doing what he wants to do. And also, at the beginning of the movie or in the first third of the movie, he's gifted essentially through his own prowess and accomplishment of getting $5 million. So he can do anything he wants. He can go anywhere he wants, but he has purpose. And everyone thinks he's a big shot because of the money, not because of James Bond. Like,
even though he does tell Sanchez his real name.
Well, he does, but thankfully he's not world famous Agent James Bond that Tiffany Case is like, oh my God. Yo, James Bond.
That's why I was wondering when I was watching it when Heller told Sanchez, oh, you're not going to believe who this guy is. He's like, oh, I know, he's British government. I wonder if Heller did find out the extent of who he was. Like, oh no, this is MI6 top tier assassin James Bond. And
did you hear about that Hugo Drax thing?
He got fired.
Remember that satellite that blew up?
Did you hear that this guy just 2 years ago thwarted another major drug operation in Afghanistan?
Remember when they were about to flood Silicon Valley? It's that guy. So yeah, I don't know. It may feel a little Miami Vice for people, and I get that. It doesn't for me because it goes enough into the James Bond tropes of gadgets, government agencies. You got MI6 after them. You've got the Hong Kong narcotics after them. DEA is not happy at all. CIA is playing against them. Again, Pam's not dropping all of the knowledge on what's going on with her operation. Felix woulda, but Felix is taken out of the picture. And one of the things that I appreciated about No Time to Die was the cojones to kill Felix. But I think that it was still early enough in the franchise where Felix had to survive. You had to have that happy ending where, yeah, he doesn't have a leg, but...
Or a bride.
Well, neither does Bond. Like,
Yeah, but Bond
I
didn't get
enjoyed.
over it that quick.
Sorry.
Bond didn't get over it that fast.
Sure, he did.
He spent the whole next movie trying to, or would have spent the whole next movie trying to find Blofeld.
Would have, didn't mention it once.
And it's implied in Diamonds Are Forever that he had spent a couple years hunting him down. And I was like, you finally done with this little vendetta of yours, Bond. Been a couple years, time to get back on the wagon type of thing. Or get back.
He could have been mad about Casey Suzuki. We don't know. Kat, I gotta know. You gotta tell me. How many martinis are you gonna give this one? Do you want to know how many I'm gonna give it? Do you want to guess?
I'll give it a 7.
You're giving it a 7.
I'll give it 7 martinis. It was more entertaining than I thought it was going to be on rewatch. I like that not as much of the movie was him being undercover with Sanchez as I remembered it being. Like, I like that there was less of that. Because, again, I still don't fully buy him when he's dressed to the nines trying to be badass. Like, even at the casino table, you could tell he was mad the whole time because Pam was there. It's like, I kind of wanted to see him just kind of playing cards of being the suave Bond for a bit. But he was kind of agitated the whole time. So I was like, oh, okay.
But one of the things that he was doing, or at least that I took away from that particular scene, was he went in and he was losing right off the hop. And that's when the pit boss calls up and says, there's this British guy, and he's playing like a real jerk off. He's losing a bunch of money, but he wants to raise the limits. Should I? And Sanchez is like, yeah. If he's losing, let him lose. And once the limits are raised, that's when he kicks into, oh, by the way, I'm James Bond and I'm good at cards. And so when Pam shows up, it kind of messes with his mojo. And she's the first person to draw attention to the table. Like, she goes over, and then that's when you go back and it's like, oh, he's up $250,000. And it's like, go get me a drink. You're making this. No, I don't want everyone here. I just want Sanchez. But yeah, and also I thought it was cool that James Bond was not enjoying winning because that wasn't his goal. He already had the money. If he wanted to invest wisely and retire quietly, he could have. But his entire motivation was to avenge his friend's wife and the maiming of his friend. And so he is on a mission, even though it's not sanctioned.
Yeah.
Anyway, I give it so far in my tally, you have given 2 10s.
I gave Dalton 2 7s.
And I give my only 10 so far to Live and Let Die. Or sorry, Live and Let Die. License to Kill. I'm glad. I thought you would be enthusiastic about that. Thank you for sharing with me.
I thought
Shall we?
Something else, but I guess not.
Well, no. So far, we still have a couple more. Still have a couple more. We've got 5 more.
4 more.
4 more.
And
yeah, there is going to be a 10 in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can spoilers, everyone. I do like things. So shall we say hello to the chat and then wind this up? All right. Oh, Tiki Fire's here. Tiki Fire's Retro Clubhouse. What's up, peeps? Hello, Tiki Fire. Thank you for joining. You guys should drop your ratings in here. What do you think of License to Kill? Tom Jr. Jackson. Ahoy, Tom.
Hail, Tom.
And the lovely Cherie.
Hello.
Hey, Sherry. Oh, and Tom is being coy and fickle. At one point, Scott, weren't you a cold-blooded Mountie? No, that was my father. And Tom promoting on Twitter. Thank you so much. A lot of hellos and hello.
Show, he's awesome.
He is. He's very good. He is one of the supporters, one of the friends, much like Tiki Fire, Miami Vice style, and Cam. Always good to see Cam. Darren J. Seeley. Oh, and right. And The Devil's Rejects, Priscilla Barnes, the late Mrs. Leiter. Oh, nice. Tiki Fire's got the name's Crockett, Sonny Crockett. See, and Darren saw the what's it called? Garter. And I didn't finish the garter thing. When the man takes the garter off of the bride's leg, then the man throws it to the dudes in the crowd, much like the bouquet.
I've never heard of that before. That's the first time I heard about that.
Well, and Cam has heard of it as well. LDG of Geeks and Joy. Hello, sir. Ahoy. Thank you for hanging out and showing up. Yes, optional garter catches. Yeah. And yeah, it is optional based on certain discomforts, based on family members and exes. Tiki Fire, I couldn't let this go. Anthony Zerb does have a truly expansive performance. Man, when his head blows up in that, even watching it on the rewatch.
It was better done than Dr. Kananga.
Oh, very much so. But that's also a difference of what, 25 years?
16.
You're much better at math. Oh, and many cats. Poor dead Sharky. Oh, my stars. Oh, and yes, Darren with the Kari Hiroki.
Yes. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, awesome guy. Q is adorable in this. Yes, he is.
It's absolutely true. And I think it was one of those things that strengthened the relationship between Bond and Q.
That makes me really wish that there was like another scene of Bond and M going back or Bond and Q going back to MI6 and M bringing them to his office and, figuring it out maybe. How would that conversation go?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he walked into the office, tossed his hat onto the hat rack, and Moneypenny said, "Oh, by the way, I look very different, and M is a woman now."
Yes, the previous M, he was fired for the not picking up on the major security breach of Q taking a bunch of gadgets and taking off to South Africa.
Stephen Amore is here. I haven't seen Stephen Amore in forever. How are you? It's good to see you. And I agree with you. Timothy Dalton is the closest to Ian Fleming's Bond. Yeah, I think so as well. And I'm not well read on the entire series of Ian Fleming's books, but the ones that I have, when I read it, it captures, like, Dalton washes over me.
Well,
just in terms of
Bond, he doesn't have the charm or the humor. He's more tough guy, serious a lot, which is the way the character was written in the books.
Well, and very much that cold-blooded killer. Stephen Amore met Timothy Dalton at a Romeo and Juliet performance by an Icelandic cast.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
That's epic. Meeting James Bond.
And then Cam sees your Timothy Dalton and raises you a Wayne Newton.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Wayne Newton at the Tropicana in Las Vegas, Mr. New Vegas, about a decade ago. I wrote this earlier, but don't see it after putting phone in my pocket. Well, we get to see it now, Cam. I've never seen Wayne Newton, and I don't think I'll have that opportunity. It's too bad. He does show up in Canadian casinos from time to time.
Yeah, I've never really been to Vegas. I mean, I've driven through Vegas, and I went to the Shelby Cobra Manufacturing Center in North Vegas, but I haven't really been to Vegas proper. That's the only place in Vegas I've been.
Cam gives License to Kill 6 martinis. Darren gives it 4.3. I think that's, let me see. Oh, my stars. Where are my fours?
I think I gave it a 7 because it was entertaining. Like more entertaining on the whole than, say, From Russia with Love, which I think I gave a 6. So I gave this a 7.
You gave it a 6.5. You gave it a 6.5.
Oh.
From Russia with Love.
I did. Okay.
But yeah, we are going to have to go and recap and figure out our ratings all the way through it. But I think I gave License to Kill a 10 out of 10. because,
You love it. It's your favorite.
well, I love it. It's my favorite, but also it's one of those movies that I do put up against other action movies of the era. And so I would say License to Kill is probably on par with something like Lethal Weapon 2 or Beverly Hills Cop 2. It's up there with a lot of my favorite sequels.
Maybe a 7 is too high. Maybe that's entertaining as a film in general, but as far as a Bond film goes.
But again, the part of the reason why I give it the 10 is because it is so up there and how many James Bond things happen. Pam Bouvier being amazing. Like, everyone talks about strong female characters, but I think Pam Bouvier is one of those 1980s. I'm going to gush. I'm gushing.
All right.
And Stephen Amore, you are absolutely correct. From Russia with Love is often called the best Bond. However, yeah, I don't know. There's going to be a reassessment because I gave it a 5 at the time.
I think, and I gave it a 6.5, I think.
Yeah. So we're going to have to see how it goes. Cam says, thanks to Kat and Scotty. Much more to Kat. She knows much more about these things than I do. Wayne was amazing. Good show. Love the magazine referral. I have to go and figure out how to get that now. How much was it? Do you mind me asking? Is that gauche?
I got the deluxe package, which included all of last year's magazines, which were like 5 issues plus the specialty issues.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little higher than normal, but I think you can get the individual issues. It's kind of weird too, because when you buy it, you don't get a receipt. What you get is an automatic email with a letter from the editor thanking you for your purchase.
Huh.
And then it was like a month later that they started showing up in these big, like, international post office sealed things you just rip open. It's like, oh, it's a magazine. And I assume this is the last one I'm getting because the deluxe package specifically said for 2021.
Okay.
And so I don't think I'm getting any more, and I don't know if I'd want, because it was a little sketchy because, you don't get an order number or a receipt. It's just like, thank you for making a purchase. And it's like, and what? And I made an account there, but it didn't recognize my passwords, and I had to create another one, and then it still doesn't recognize that I even made a purchase there. So it's like, I don't know.
I am looking forward to calling their customer service and being rerouted around an automated computer.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on my bank account to make sure that they're not, like, taking out another amount of money and saying, oh, thank you for making another purchase. Like, no.
I've got a prepaid MasterCard that I can use online in case anything sketchy happens.
Yes, it's MI6 Confidential.
Okay, MI6 Confidential. Thank you so much. And if I have to find that information again, I will just rewind this particular show.
And this particular issue is titled Special Publication Number 5.
Okay. And yeah, no, agreed with you, Stephen Amore. Bah!
Yeah.
Came out the same year as Lethal Weapon 2, but Lethal Weapon 2 walks circles around this Bond outing. Darren, I don't know. There would be an interesting head-to-head.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting head-to-head. We should start a Lethal Weapon show. Kat, what do you think?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe we could talk about it in relation to this film.
And then Cam says to Stephen Amore that he is biased towards the Connery. Oh, yes. Stephen Amore says, what is the worst Bond? It's not on Her Majesty's Secret Service. That final scene, the model playing Bond really hits his stride. Agreed. And he acts better than in the rest of the movie. Yeah, George Lazenby. Agreed. And as far as I'm concerned, so far, the worst James Bond movie, in my opinion, is Octopussy.
I think I initially said You Only Live Twice. I might have changed it to Diamonds Are Forever, because that one I had a real hard time recapping because of just how incoherent the whole thing is.
You know what? I don't think I wrote down Diamonds Are Forever.
I think I gave it a 2, but I probably should have given it a 1.
Well, You Only Live Twice, you gave a 1.
Yeah.
But no, oh, Diamonds. No, Diamonds, you gave it to. I gave it to as well. But yes. Wow. I may have to actually drop down Octopussy, although I can't wait to see Die Another Day. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Jump off of it, more like it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to everyone in the chat.
Yes.
I absolutely appreciate you guys hanging out. And while this is the end of Timothy Dalton, and this is the end of License to Kill, so we do have more things to look forward to. Much like ourselves, we will return next week with GoldenEye, new Bond. We get Brosnan on deck. And as always, James Bond will return. Thanks, everybody. Night, Cat. No, I did it again. I did it again.
Show, Scott.
I screwed up the beginning and the end. This is perfect.
End the show.
I'm ending it. Stop yelling.